All right, so this week, this is kind of very random for us, but it's one of these cases where I feel like British people of a certain age probably are well familiar with this show, it seems, but it's something I never heard of before. So it's kind of neat just to jump into something that's new to us, where we watched a show called Aliens in the Family a while ago that was a British, I guess, a kid show from the 90s. And it started off really well. Maybe it didn't quite stick the landing, but it was pretty entertaining. It was pretty cool. And we found it on this YouTube channel that is named No Remaining Commercial Potential, which I always like that name too, because that's just like, TV shows no one cares about anymore. There's no more remaining commercial potential, so the companies aren't concerned about them. So it's just like, whatever, put it on YouTube. Who cares? I think we also watched, we didn't do an episode about it, but do you remember we watched a bit of this show called Aquila that was about these kids who found a spaceship in their backyard and they had it hidden in their,
Yeah.
right,
Yep. I remember that one.
had it hidden in their garage. So yeah, I just thought that guy's channel seems cool. Just the things he posts seem interesting, just old British stuff. So he posted a show called Thriller, and it's an anthology series from 1973. It ran for 6 series, which is quite a few for a British show, 43 episodes. So from 1973 to 1976, it was created and mostly written by a guy named Brian Clemens, which that's cool about British shows too, that it can be so like auteur driven that you can just have one person write most of the episodes, because that never happens in North America. And that guy worked on a bunch of stuff, but I think most notably he was one of the main guys behind The Avengers, so that's obviously a classic show. Each story is a thriller of some variety, from tales of the supernatural to just plain old whodunits. And yeah, I guess I don't actually know a ton about this show, just that it was a British anthology show from the 70s. It did play in America a bit, and this is kind of interesting. With an eye to the American rebroadcast market, most of the episodes had at least one American principal character portrayed by an American actor. They slipped an American in there to try to get it on American TV, and I guess it worked. It played in reruns till about 1978. But have you ever heard of this show? You ever stumbled across this?
No, never did. Never did. Hmm.
And the episode we have that the guy posted on the No Remaining Commercial Potential channel, if anyone wants to watch along with us, that's where to find it. It's season 1, episode 3, Someone at the Top of the Stairs. So yeah, that's all. I guess I just don't know much about it. It's just a British anthology, but again, because it ran for so many episodes, I feel like it is probably one of those things where a British person would probably be like, oh yeah, Thriller, of course I know Thriller. But we are mere Canadians, so we never heard of it. So
Catchy name, though. Right? Catchy names. A person at the top of the stairs.
yeah.
Ooh. I don't know if anybody, people who live in houses, especially older houses that have stairs, there's always something about those stairs in the dark that's really kind of freaky. I think I've asked you this before, if you ever felt freaked out by the stairs in our house. Which you go down some stairs, then you're on a landing, and then you go down other stairs. Did you ever get the feeling that there was something in the staircase or something in the stairwell?
It did a little. I do remember a little bit of, I don't know, it's just one of those weird things. It was when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were a thing. I do have a little bit of memories of just thinking like that one of the bad guys from Ninja Turtles might bust through the window. But that didn't really last that long. My main memory, as far as big old, scary houses, is before you built that back porch on the back of the house, when they would do these things at school about fire safety and fire prevention and how to escape a house during a fire. So in the front bedroom, it'd be no problem because there's the porch and you just hop out the window, hop onto the porch, hop down to the ground, no problem. But that back room, that used to play on my mind of like all this crap about like, just tie a bunch of bed sheets together. And it's like, I'm 8 years old. What are you talking about? There's no way I can so I just assumed in a fire I would just fall out the window and just break my legs. you know?
Now, what I'm talking about is it may be in our house. You didn't get the same sense because on the landing there's a window and you can see light always coming in. But the house I grew up in Marysville, the stairs went up the side of the wall. There were probably 8 or 10 steps, I suppose, and then a small little landing, and the stairs turned 3 or 4 steps, and then you were up on the second level. No windows. Every one of the kids in our house, and we were a big family, and everybody has said they felt it. It was like a cold space when you came down the stairs, the 3 steps to the landing, and you had to turn and go down the 10 or 8 or 10 steps to the bottom of the floor, to the bottom, first floor. There was like a space there that was always really like as if there was something there, a cold spell or something. So when you hit that landing, you just flew down the stairs. Everybody just flew down the stairs. So much so that at the bottom of those stairs there was a front door, and there were two glass. There was a glass set of glass panes that was small glass panes along the side of the door. Well, more of those glass panes that were close to the floor got kicked out or hit because somebody went flying down the stairs and went into those little, their feet or whatever, went into the little glass panes and broke them. And everybody, of course, and what's wrong with you? Well, there was something in the stairs. There was something up there. And that's what I'm talking about. So when I hear a title that says someone at the top of the stairs, like I'm like, oh yeah, I can kind of relate to that. Yee.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the lack of a window, because yeah, since our house that I grew up in had a window halfway down, yeah, that definitely helps. It has to be pretty dark out to get that feeling. I wonder too, like it could just be that it was dark and creepy looking, but sometimes there are physical reasons why people feel like that. Like I remember there was this monastery in, I'm going to say Ireland. I don't remember the details anymore, obviously, but there was this one area where it would just like literally make the hair stand up on people's necks, and give them goosebumps and stuff. And back in the day, they thought it was weird demons or something. And it turns out it's because of the way the wind hits the side of this cliffside that the monastery was on. It literally made the place vibrate in a way that you couldn't really tell, but your body could feel it, but they only found that out hundreds of years later. And it's like, oh, all those monks talking about the devil, like they really were feeling something, but they didn't know why.
Well, we had always heard this story too that someone had fallen down the cellar steps in our house, and when you went down the cellar steps, you went into like a dugout area before you went into the actual basement itself. So here was this kind of dugout area with these, I don't know, there weren't that many steps going down to the basement, 5, 6, I suppose. But we had heard that somebody had died by falling down those cellar steps. Now, years later, I heard that that didn't happen in our house at all. That happened in the house next door, or one of those houses. But as a kid, there was somebody who died in that house. And then there was that cold spot at the top of the stairs. So there you go.
Even that though, it's still kind of impressive though that it happened in any of the houses in your neighborhood. I just assumed it was a completely made up story. So I mean, that's close enough for a ghost.
Oh, no, well, when you get a family of 12 kids, right? They're going to elaborate. It's not just one kid hearing the story and letting their imagination go wild. The whole damn family let their imagination go wild. And they just kept building on it and building on it. And you had older brothers and sisters who, if they wanted to keep you in line, they'd say, you better watch out. You never know what's down at the bottom of those cellar stairs. Or, hey, it's dark on the stairs going to the upstairs. There's that turn you've got to make at the top. Ooh. What a great childhood.
There's also the thing of like stairs going down into a basement. There's like a movie called People Under the Stairs. Like that's another idea, is stairs that are just the slats, just the steps. Because then, someone could reach out from under the stairs and grab your ankle, and then you're done.
That's what our stairs were like. And even more so, it wasn't even like a nice big wide open area that you went into. It was a dugout area underneath like a back porch that you went down these wooden slat steps, and then there was a door that took you into the main cellar itself. But yeah, it was the dugout. Anybody could have been hiding in the dugout or under the stairs. Scary house.
Well, all right, that's a good mood to be in then for this. This seems appropriate to the thriller anthology.
Maybe I'll find out after all these years who is at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to watch along, it's season 1, episode 3 of Thriller, Someone at the Top of the Stairs. It's on YouTube. Oh, and this is kind of neat too, because again, I don't know where this guy gets these things from and where he uploads them, but this even starts with the like the part you're not supposed to see, the part that is just for the TV station where it counts down. Like if you've got a commercial running, it's like, okay, 30 seconds until the show's got to start, and it's got the little clock ticking down. It's just neat to see stuff like that you're not normally able to see. This is the raw tape that they sent to the TV stations. So that's cool.
All right, let's check it out. I can hardly wait.
In 3, Thriller, Someone at the Top of the Stairs, Part 1, Take 1.
So, I mean, I guess it was just kind of like nothing then, right? Of like, okay, so that's like the eye, and that's the guy who lives in the upstairs or whatever. But it was revealed at the end that all the people in the house were fake, right? Like they didn't come back.
Yeah, they were really him. Like all those eyeballs looking at people were him. The taking of the trunk down the stairs at the beginning, it was him. And he could replace himself with those images, which he wanted her to see and believe. But it was all him. I'm trying to not be too harsh with it, but I found it terribly contrived. I know she had this apparently at the end he says you were the only one who could seem to have that sensibility to think that there was something off, something wrong. But I just found it too contrived. I mean, the things like the suspicions that she had were just so. I mean, they had just moved into the house, and all of a sudden she's got this feeling. And maybe there are people who have that feeling. And then then I look back and I say, well, okay, am I looking at it through 2024 eyes where we have seen so many of these demonic type movies and shows, and that everything seems trite now because we know the answers to all these things, and we've seen all the suspicions, and we've seen all the plot lines, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll try to put myself back to the early 70s when this was made, and would I have bought into this, what I'm calling contrived? And I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. Even in 1973, I would have said, oh, come on. She's a bit much. Like, she's just too, I don't know, too suspicious about everything. The average person would never suspect any of that stuff. Like the roommate, is so much more realistic of saying, well, come on. I mean, even with the kid supposedly looking into the bathroom. Well, okay, what she does is, or somebody does, is they stuff the hole with something. And to me, that's what you would do. You say, oh my God, some peeping Tom, you'd stick something in his eye or something, but she doesn't. She leaves, and she's so upset, and she goes to the closet, and of course then she finds the kid. But even then, she didn't go back into the bathroom and plug the hole and say, well, I'll show that little bugger. No, she just goes into the bedroom, and she's so upset because there's some kid was peeping Tom at her. But she just knows it's something deeper. It's just too contrived. I just couldn't buy it.
I wonder if, it could be for the greater value of the series in general, like the Thriller series. It could be good that it spans different genres, right? So each week you don't totally know what you're going to get. But I also feel like that might be a problem, because if some of these episodes are supernatural and some of them are standard whodunits, it sort of doesn't set proper expectations, because this very much felt like, it was a bit eerie and spooky, but it was fairly down to earth. It's like just a spooky house and weird stuff is happening. And yeah, maybe it wasn't the greatest show of all time, but it's like, okay, well, we can work with this. Maybe it's building to something. And then when the supernatural twist happens, it almost literally is just like the writing version of the get out of jail free card. It's like, just don't worry about any of that. None of that mattered. I'm just a spooky devil man, and I've been running the whole house the whole time. And it's like, well, then why the hell did I just watch 45 minutes of this stuff? It's like, let's just erase the Etch-a-Sketch and a sudden new plot. Like a lot of times we've talked about, particularly with British mysteries, they tend to do a pretty good job of, if you're paying attention, you might not piece it together in the moment, but you can at least look back at the totality of it and go like, oh, that's pretty cool. This led to that, and this led to that. Maybe I missed something, but I don't feel like they laid out a breadcrumb trail at all of the this is a super spooky supernatural thing. It just came out of nowhere and just destroyed the whole plot. And I was like, who is this man? What is going on? Why is this a different show all of a sudden?
And when he gave the explanation at the end, now again, I'm trying to look at it from two different angles. The explanation went on and on and on and on, and I thought, oh my God, here's one of these kind of demonic things where some guy can transpose time and take, his spirit can move into all these other bodies or whatever, but it just was too long. And then I thought, okay, now maybe I'm being unfair. Let me think back to 1973. Would I have needed such a long explanation as to who he was and how this happened? And I said to myself, you know what? No, I would not. I can go back 50 some years, but I would not have needed that big, long storyline. I was like, yawn. Okay, buddy, we get it. You're one of these supernatural guys who can transpose time and place and take on the lifelines of people that you've murdered. Yeah, we get it. So shut up now and let's move on.
Yeah, it's not quite the same plot, and it's a little tougher for me because, I wasn't born until 79, so I have a hard time knowing what the cultural zeitgeist was in the early 70s. But this was the same year as The Exorcist. That's my only kind of touch point, is it's somewhat of a demonic possession, sort of similar, and it did come out this same time. So maybe this was like a new concept, like it wasn't exactly run into the ground yet. But yeah, I was saying how there was no breadcrumb trail. I guess there was one. The only thing was that a lot of people in the house use the term marvelous, which isn't even that weird, but she really picks up on it. And then you find out at the end it's because this man, his favorite term is marvelous. So that's obviously an indicator that he was possessing these people or, influencing them because they kept saying marvelous. But that's all.
Yeah, and the thing with the hands.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That was the other thing, though. The thing with the hands, the two fingers pointing, the two forefingers coming together and pointing up.
Yeah, like Mr. Burns. Yeah, so it's like a little tiny thing, but yeah, not nearly enough. And it wasn't spooky at the time. As we were watching, you kept saying, like, why is she making such a big deal about people saying marvelous? She's acting like it's the end of the world, and who cares? And yeah, it's obviously just, it's a case of the writers trying to tie these things together. But yeah, it's certainly, it's neat, I guess, in the sense of I like kind of putting myself in that headspace of like, oh, imagine it's a cold winter's eve in 1973 and you're just a British family and you just were watching this on TV and it's like, oh, that's probably a pretty nice little evening, that's all right. But as something to really critique and look at later, it's like, yeah, I don't know though, pretty half-assed. It's not exactly, you don't watch it and go like, oh, that's clever. You kind of feel the opposite of that.
And at this point when this came out, you already had the big films of the day which dealt with this kind of demonic type stuff, like Rosemary's Baby had already been out, and just about everybody and their dog saw Rosemary's Baby. You had seen all the Dracula movies and all those B movies. They had already all been out. Like the late 1960s and the 1970s were just full of all this demonic spiritual stuff. So this one I felt was weak in that. I mean, they tried, but I just find it too contrived.
Yeah, I feel like we might have been better off, because we just watched a random episode, but it's maybe too bad we didn't get one of the episodes that's more of a conventional whoddunit. I feel like that might have worked better for us, because the hard left turned into Satanism and whatever. I don't know. Yeah, that didn't really work for me.
But when you think of who the director was, now that was Brian Clemens, who did a lot of those shows of the Avengers in that time frame were kind of that weird spiritual stuff too. They weren't just spy shows. Oftentimes, like we saw that one that was set in the aerodrome from World War II, and the former airplane pilots were getting together. Remember that one that was so weird, and there was a loss in time or something, an hour off or something weird? It had this same feel to it of strange supernatural things happening, and you could not put that thing together until the very, very end. It explained it. And so this is very, very similar to that. So, and knowing it's the same director, of course, That makes sense. He seemed to be into that world of otherness or
Yeah, no, that is very true though, because you're definitely right about the Avengers. Because I remember that very clearly when we watched the Avengers. Because I was very surprised how weird it was. In my memory, the Avengers was a lot more of a straightforward spy show, but in reality, yeah, it's quite a weird show. It goes some weird places. And then the other thing with this thriller show, but this is entirely on me. This isn't the fault of them. This is just the productions of the time. Obviously, they just had a similar feel because just the way they film, where they film the inside on tape and then they go outside, they film on film, and just the way the sets look and even the clothing of the time is that my my introduction as a young lad to this whole era and this style of British television is Monty Python, and I just could not get that out of my head the whole time. And it didn't help at all that her potential boyfriend character was so reminiscent of Eric Idle. It's weird. He looked like him, he dressed like him, he talked like him. And
you're right. And once you mentioned that, yeah, I couldn't get past it either. Every scene that he was in, I was expecting some kind of a Monty Python skit or ending.
yeah, and even the acting style is not different. It's like the way he delivered lines and stuff, especially early in a Monty Python sketch when they're still just setting up the premise, is identical. It's not different at all.
I know. When I saw the credits at the end, I know it wasn't Eric Idle, but I was almost expecting it to say that part was played by Eric Idle.
So yeah, again, that's just my brain crisscrossing stuff, of the era. But oh well, I guess that's the thing too, that it was a little almost like a double downer about this thriller episode, is that it was just kind of taking its time and a little slow and like, okay, some weird stuff's happening and we keep making Eric Idle jokes and we're not totally getting into it. But then I guess when they did find her roommate down in the basement, all of a sudden it got kind of heavy and kind of creepy. And I was like, oh my God, is that lady dead down in the basement? And then there's another dead guy down in the basement. And like all of a sudden, that was kind of neat, where it suddenly felt so serious. And then in the next moment, it was Dr. Voodoo talking about his Satan powers. And I'm like, what just happened? They had something for a second there. And yeah, it's just, they just threw it away instead to make it be about spooky supernatural powers. But it was like, there was a moment there where I was like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this is going to lead to a creepy humdinger ending. And it did not.
No, it just ended that usual, the spirit transposes into another being. I mean, that was so obvious when she's sitting on the stairs with the boyfriend, and her hair is down, and she's got her head down, and the hair is down, and you're thinking, all right, I know she's going to put up her face, and she's going to be that spirit. Like, it was just so obvious that that's how that was going to end. And she used the word marvelous and put her hands together in the two fingers pointing up. Like, okay, you did just exactly what I knew you were going to do.
Yeah, and I mean, that is totally one of those things, too, that, the only possible way to, accept it is to say, like, oh, maybe that wasn't so bad in 1973. But as you were explaining, nah, it's still plenty bad. It's still plenty corny in 1973.
Because the things with the most successful of those movies of that type, horror type, spiritual, whatever, you have to make the audience believe that people would react a certain way. And her whole actions throughout were just so over the top that immediately you're saying, nobody, the average person would never be that sensitive or overreact like that. It's too much. So you have to believe, like, it's the old story when the killer's on the loose and the group is together and the person says, I'll go alone, or they go alone, or there's a dark cellar and you go down into the cellar, but there's no need for you to go down in the cellar. What you would do is run away. Or you have a knife in your hand and you get it and you drop, you do whatever you're going to put the guy under or keep him quiet or whatever. And then you get up and you leave the knife. No, you would not. You would take the knife. You see, you've got to make it so that the audience would say, Yeah, I can see that happening, and I can see me doing that. So the attacker has got to attack the person, but not because they went into the cellar to find him, because you wouldn't do that. You would run away. You know what I'm saying? You can't, you can't just have people, oh, well, I think I'll go down to the cellar to see if he's down there. And no, you would not do that.
Yeah, and that was my only theory about that is I was saying how cool it is with British shows that sometimes they do this thing where it is just one person who writes the majority of the episodes. That's kind of a neat practice because we'd never do that in North America. But the downside of it is, maybe there's a lack of oversight sometimes. Maybe having a few other eyes on that script wouldn't have hurt. Have a few other people just going like, well, is this really as tightened up as it could be? But if this guy's writing, over the course of 6 series, he may have written dozens of these episodes. So yeah, maybe he didn't always put his best foot forward.
One more point. How many times did they have to look knowingly at help me written on the closet door? Okay, you look at it once, you comment, gee, I wonder what that is. That's kind of weird. But every 10 minutes, you open the closet door and you stare at help me. You've already seen it. Come on. How many times do you have to look at it? And get, oh my God, I wonder what that means. Okay, we got it. We understood that somebody wrote help me on the door. So leave it.
One thing I did like, though, that actually I think people don't do this anymore for the same reason. Like, people kind of consider it corny. It's like a film style of the time, but I think it's really cool, is I did like the weird zoom-ins, like when they'd show the eye peeking through a peephole, and then the camera would like zoom in on the eye. It's kind of spooky and kind of neat, and nobody does that anymore, but I think that should come back, because that actually it's kind of unnerving. It's kind of cool.
And the other one that was cool relating to the eye, they showed at one point, they showed the eye in the ceiling looking through, and then they showed the room. The eye is looking at the room. And if you especially noticed it when the girl who was drying her hair, she's moving her head around, she's drying her head with a towel, and a couple of times they said, is she going to look up? But she didn't. And you wouldn't. Again, I'm saying you wouldn't what would make you look up while you're drying your hair? There's a hole in the ceiling and there's an eyeball, which some directors would have done that. And then she would have been freaked out. But no, she just kept drying her hair like you would, and that eye was looking, and she moved her head around enough that you thought, if she just turns her head a little bit more, she's going to see the hole in the ceiling. But she didn't. And that was very realistic, because that is, you're drying your hair. What on earth would make you look up at the ceiling like that? You wouldn't. So that was good. That's what I mean about, you've got to have it realistic enough. Throw that stuff in there to suggest things, but don't go over the top, which they did in every other scene that Donna Mills was in. Oh my God, I found her tiresome.
And even, maybe, I don't know about other productions at the time, but maybe that is another reason why it reminded me of Monty Python, is because, maybe everyone's acting was a little over the top, because, that Eric Idle type guy, it just seemed like he was just a moment away at all times from going, what's brown and sounds like a bell? Dong! Like it wouldn't even have seemed weird if he just said that all of a sudden. So, it makes it a little harder to get into this spooky mood. So maybe that one didn't go super duper great, but I was looking at that YouTube page, the No Remaining Commercial Potential, and the guy has just so many random British shows on there that I've never heard of. So maybe next week I'll grab another one. Let's just grab something else and see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's the nice thing about, especially because we're, North American, it kind of can't, how bad can it go? Like, it's just neat for us just to experience what was going on in British TV. It's just kind of fundamentally more interesting because we only got limited at little bits of it here and there. So yeah, why not? We'll just go dive into something else random and see how it goes.
And in fairness to this show, after I've just shit all over it, in fairness to it, if I was sitting at a home in Britain in 1973 with limited television. They probably had just very much like we do in Canada. We have CBC and CTV. They probably had BBC and who knows, maybe one or two other channels in 1973. It's an evening in the wintertime and you're just watching TV. You probably would have said, hey, I like that. It kept me occupied. I could go out to the kitchen occasionally and get my cup of tea and a biscuit and come back in and still pick up the thread of what was happening, and had a little bit of I don't think it was a surprise ending, but some people might have found it was a surprise ending. It had some beauty. The girls, they always kept saying how beautiful the girls were. Yes, the girls were beautiful. The sets were great. The acting was not too bad. Yeah, I could see maybe I'd go to bed at night and think, that was a nice way to end the day.
Maybe too, I mean, at the time it was more the era of the satanic panic too. So if you were, like, say you were a housewife who really did believe in the devil and that he was trying to corrupt society, maybe that ending would have really freaked you out. You'd go up to your kid's room and throw away all his Dungeons and Dragons books. Just like, maybe that really spooked out some people of the time.